I'm sure at some point in your professional life that you've been looking at a spreadsheet and wondering if there's a formula that's going to calculate something for you. Perhaps you've got lots of lists of columns and you want to do some sort of VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP or what if analysis, etc. And you don't quite know the code for it. You know that it exists, you know what you want it to do, but Excel code, it's not particularly intuitive, it's not particularly ergonomic, it's not something that just naturally flows. So you have to do things the old-fashioned way. Even though you know that it's there, you've checked the directory, but you've tried using it, you don't know which values to add into it, etc. But with AI, you can now use natural language of just talking to it as you would talk to someone else, as you would ask someone else a question. You can ask it to write the formula for you based on what you want it to do. And not only that, it will then give you a step-by-step guide of how to insert that formula into your spreadsheet, which values you need to put into it, and it will then work. And also, if your formula is broken, if there is a break in your formula in your spreadsheet, you can actually post that formula in and say, for some reason it's not working, why is it not working? And it will analyze it and audit it, and it will tell you why it's not working and how you can fix it. So lots of really useful tools here with AI and formulas in Excel. So take a look at this video and see if you find it useful.
If you're like me, you've probably been using some form of spreadsheet software, whether that's Google Sheets, whether that's Excel, for many years. But you probably reached a point where you got familiar with the functions that you used and you never really learned more about what the software was capable of. And one of the reasons for that is that it's not actually immediately obvious what the formulas are capable of, what the software is capable of, because you have to already know what you're doing to be able to do it. But that's where AI is revolutionizing the use of software such as Excel, is that you can ask it sort of common sense type questions and it will actually go off and find the formula for you. So rather than having to already know how to do things in Excel, you can just ask general questions and it will go off and find the very specific breakdowns for how you achieve that. So I'm going to give a couple of examples in this segment here. We've got a list of learners on various different courses, and you can see that they've got 5 different modules and their scores for those 5 different modules. We can also see that we've got their name in the column A. Now, for our purposes, we actually like to be able to filter by different surnames. We like to be able to put it in alphabetical order by surname, etc. And we also don't really want to have both the surname and the full name, the first name, in the same column. So what we're going to do in this segment is look at how we can split that column up quickly and easily, and also how we can find the average grade of the learners. Because you might look at that and think, well, that's quite an obvious and easy one. You use the average formula. I know how to use the average formula, just like I know how to use the sum formula. You just highlight it and you can see even at the bottom of the screen, it gives us the sum, it gives us the count, it gives us the average. And we can work out the average, simply type in average and highlight the columns. Gives us a 67. That's great, but they haven't actually, this person here, John Doe, hasn't sat Module 5. So their score for Module 5 is currently 0, and that's bringing the whole average down. Now, the problem with that is it's not giving us a key indicator of where John Doe currently is and their current ability. Particularly if we remove one of these, say they hadn't done Module 2 either, suddenly their average is less than 50 when they've been getting at least 75 in every paper that they have sat. So one thing that we could do here to avoid that 0 is to only average the modules that they've done. So of course we could change that. We could change that to just say it's just average of C2 to F2. Now we've got a better average for John Doe. But of course, now when we go back to this spreadsheet to update John Doe, let's say, oh, we got 82, it doesn't actually affect the formula anymore. We now have to redo the formula, which we don't really want to have to do. We don't have to redo formulas every single time someone has completed it. So what we can do is we can ask GPT to create a formula for us that averages all of the scores in the columns but excludes zeros. So I'm going to go over to GPT now, and you can see I've written a formula here. Write me a formula for finding the average grade for a row in column C to G excluding zeros. Now, prior to AI and GPT, you might have had to have asked someone or really looked into this and how you would do it, etc., because it's not immediately obvious and intuitive as to how you would do that. But now I can just ask it a question similar to how I would just ask another person, and it gives me the specific formula. So now we can go back to our spreadsheet and post the formula in here. And as you can see, that's given us our average, but it's highlighted it all, excluding the zeros. So now if they did get 82 in that, it brings the average up. It changes the average. And of course, like with most spreadsheets formulas, you can then just drag that down and it calculates the different averages for you. So that's a useful way of thinking of GPT as a way of just asking in standard language terms how you would do complicated formulas. I know that's not the most complicated, but it's for demonstrative purposes. But what about the names here? Let's say we don't want to have the full name anymore. We want to have a first name and we want to have a surname column. Now we could go through all of this. You can see there's 200 odd names, and we could highlight the John, post that in there. We could highlight the Doe and post that in there. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's going to take a long time by the time we go through all 200 names here. So what we now want to do is find a formula that's going to give us the full name. We'll take the full name and put the first name in that column for first name and the surname in that column under surname. So just as before, we use GPT to write in normal, natural language. Write me a formula that extracts the first name from column A and the second name from column A. Just misspelled that there. And it gives us formulas for both the first name and the last name. So if we copy this here, that's going to be our first name. Now if we go back to our spreadsheet, can I post the formula in there? Just one thing I do need to check is I didn't mention that it was row 2 that it started on, so we just have to update that. Otherwise it will come up with full name when we post it in. Now see it's John. Again, go back and get the formula from GPT. This time looking at the second name. Posting that back in here. And again, just updating it to be A2 so that we don't get name for everything. And we can see John Doe, and if we put that down, we can now see we've effectively split out all of the names there. So now we've got first names and surnames in their own separate columns. So what you should be able to see is the key takeaway here, that you can use GPT as a natural way of asking specific questions and providing very specific formulaic answers for you to use in Excel. So if we look at this surname formula here, the actual what's come up is equals right A16, comma, len A16 minus search A16. It's a very complicated, not intuitive. You wouldn't have just naturally assumed that you could type that in, or that isn't necessarily a formula that you'd think would appear when you are trying to find and extract a full name. So way of thinking it is it's a natural way of asking standard questions to provide you with specific formulas for Excel.